The darkness of space was vast and unyielding, its silence broken only by the hum of the Celestial Vanguard's engines. For Captain Alara Vren, that silence was both a comfort and a warning. As the Dreadnought sailed through the endless void, she stood at the viewport on the bridge, staring out at the stars. Each one seemed serene, but she knew better. Somewhere in that tranquility lurked chaos. "Captain, incoming transmission," said Ensign Kale, breaking her reverie. His voice was steady, but Alara could see the faint unease in his posture. A young officer fresh from training, Kale still wasn't used to the unexpected, terrifying investigation. She felt herself start to calm, trembling slightly at his approach to the fleet Master Chief. And in deep space, unexpected meant dangerous. "Put it through," Alara ordered, turning away from the viewport. She adjusted her uniform, her expression sharpening into a mask of command. The crackle of static filled the bridge before a voice emerged, faint and distorted. "Humans, we implore you. The Narvoth have arrived. Zorathia is burning." The voice broke into unintelligible noise before cutting out entirely. The bridge fell silent, the weight of the words sinking in. Alara's jaw tightened. Zorathia, a name she hadn't heard in years. The planet was a marvel of biotech engineering, its civilization advanced but fiercely independent. They'd always kept Earth's coalition at arm's length, unwilling to submit to alliances that might limit their sovereignty. And now, they were calling for help. "Replay the message," Alara said, her tone clipped. The transmission replayed, the desperation in the voice even more pronounced the second time. She turned to her second-in-command, Commander Elric Sen, who was already studying the situation on his tablet. "Thoughts?" she asked. Elric didn't look up. "Could be a trap. The Zorathians have never trusted us, and their pride might have kept them from asking for help, even if they were in trouble." Alara frowned. "I think this is an elaborate ruse to lure a coalition dreadnought into their space." "It's possible," Elric said, "but it's equally possible that they're telling the truth. The Navath—" He hesitated, his usually calm demeanor faltering. "The Navath don't leave survivors." The name sent a chill through the bridge. The Narvoth were a nightmare made flesh, an alien hive mind species that consumed entire planets, reducing them to barren husks. Reports of their attacks on fringe worlds had been trickling in for months, each more horrifying than the last. The coalition had yet to face them directly, content to watch from a distance as the outer territories fell. "Lieutenant Lind," Alara called to her tactical officer, "pull up everything we have on Zorathia. I want a full tactical breakdown in 5 minutes." "Yes, ma'am," Lind said, his fingers flying over his console. Alara turned back to Elric. "I'm not ignoring a distress call, especially one like this. If the Zorathians are under attack, it's our duty to respond." "And if it's a trap," Elric pressed. "Then we'll deal with it," Alara said firmly. "But if it's not, and we do nothing—" She didn't finish the thought. She didn't need to. The weight of inaction was heavier than any potential ambush. The bridge buzzed with activity as the crew prepared for the worst. Alara returned to her seat, her mind racing. The Celestial Vanguard was the Coalition's flagship Dreadnought, a technological marvel armed with the most advanced weaponry humanity had ever created. But even its might not be enough against a force like the Narvoth. A ping from Lind's station broke the tension. "Captain, I've got the data on Zorathia, patching it through now." The holographic display above the bridge shimmered to life, showing a detailed map of Zorathian space. The planet itself was a vibrant blue-green orb, surrounded by a network of trade stations and defense platforms. It was a hub of activity, a testament to its people's ingenuity. "Defenses?" Alara asked. "Significant, at least by most standards," Lind said. "Their fleet is built around biotech vessels, organic ships with self-repairing capabilities and adaptive weaponry. They've got ground-based plasma cannons and a planetary shield grid. Then how are they losing? Elric asked, leaning closer to the display. Lind hesitated. The Narvoth don't fight like anything we've encountered before. They overwhelm. Numbers, brute force, and an uncanny ability to exploit weaknesses. Even the most advanced defenses can crumble. Alara stared at the map, her decision made. We're jumping to Zorathia. Battle readiness protocols across all decks. I want our weapons primed and archangels prepped for deployment. Yes, ma'am, the bridge crew said in unison. As the Celestial Vanguard shifted to battle mode, the low hum of its hyperspace drive filled the ship. Alara leaned back in her chair, her mind already running through possible scenarios. If the Zorathians were as desperate as their transmission suggested, this wouldn't just be a rescue mission. It would be a war. The hyperspace jump was brief, the Dreadnought's advanced engines cutting through the fabric of space like a knife. When the ship emerged, the scene before them was worse than Alara had anticipated. Zorathia was burning. The once thriving planet was a vision of chaos. Massive plumes of smoke and fire rose from its cities, the destruction visible even from orbit. The Zorathian defense fleet, a proud assembly of biotech ships, was in tatters. What remained of their forces was locked in a desperate battle against an overwhelming swarm of Narvoth bioships. These grotesque, insect-like vessels moved with an eerie coordination, their bioluminescent shells pulsing with an unnatural glow. "By the stars," Elric murmured, his usual stoicism replaced with quiet horror. "Status report?" Alara demanded. Lind's voice was grim. "Enemy fleet composition. 117 bioships, 3 carriers. Zorathian fleet is down to 12% strength. Ground forces are scattered and in disarray. The planetary shield grid is failing." Alara's stomach churned. The situation was worse than she'd feared, but there was no time to hesitate. "Helm, position us above the capital city. Weapons, I want firing solutions on those carriers immediately." The Celestial Vanguard moved into position, its imposing frame casting a shadow over the ruined planet below. The ship's main railguns roared to life, sending high-velocity projectiles streaking toward the Narvoth carriers. The first impact was devastating, tearing through the organic hull of one carrier and sending it spiraling into the atmosphere. The Narvoth reacted instantly. The swarm shifted, dozens of bioships breaking off from their assault to converge on the Dreadnought. The Celestial Vanguard's automated defense turrets lit up, creating a dazzling web of laser fire that intercepted the incoming threat. "Deploy the Archangels," Alara ordered. From the Dreadnought's lower hangar, the Archangels launched. These humanoid mechs, piloted by elite soldiers, were Earth's answer to close-quarters combat. Each unit was equipped with advanced weaponry, from plasma blades to missile pods, and their pilots were among the best humanity had to offer. Lieutenant Mira Voss led the first wave. Her Archangel, a sleek silver machine with glowing blue accents, dove toward the planet's surface. The sight below was grim. Zorathian cities reduced to rubble, their once brilliant architecture marred by fire and ash. "Mira, we've got Narvoth ground units closing in on the capital," came the voice of her squadmate Jensen. "Thousands of them." "We'll handle it," Mira said, gripping her controls tightly. "Archangels, form up on me. We're not letting those things take another inch." As the mechs engaged the Narvoth on the ground, the battle raged above. The Celestial Vanguard was holding its own, but the sheer number of enemies was overwhelming. For every Narvoth ship destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place. On the bridge, Alara knew they couldn't hold out forever. "Commander, how long until reinforcements arrive?" Elric shook his head. "We're too far from Coalition space. We're on our own." "Then we make this count," Alara said, her voice steely. "Fire the Inferno beams." The crew hesitated. The Inferno beams were the Dreadnought's most powerful weapon, capable of leveling entire cities. But their destructive power came at a cost. Collateral damage was almost guaranteed. "Captain, there are survivors on the ground," Lynn said cautiously. If we don't act now, there won't be any survivors left, Alara snapped. Target the Narvoth ground forces. Fire. The ship shuddered as the inferno beams activated, twin streams of energy lancing toward the planet's surface. The beams cut through the Narvoth war machines like a blade, vaporizing entire swarms in a single stroke. The Zorathian capital was spared, but only just. As the light from the beams faded, Alara allowed herself a moment of relief. The tide had turned, but the battle was far from over. The Zorathians had called for help, and Earth had answered. Now it was up to them to ensure that Zorathia and the galaxy didn't fall to the Narvoth. The celestial Vanguard cruised silently through the void, its engines a low thrum of precision engineering. On the surface, the ship seemed like a beacon of calm efficiency, but inside, the tension was palpable. The distress call from Zorathia was no longer just a mystery. It was a puzzle with stakes far higher than anyone had anticipated. Captain Alara Vren paced the bridge, her boots clicking against the polished metal floor. Her mind raced with questions. Why had the Zorathians reached out to Earth after years of isolation? What had gone so catastrophically wrong that they'd finally swallowed their pride? And, most pressing of all, how had the Narvoth had arrived in Zorathian space so suddenly? "Commander," Alara called, turning to her second-in-command. Elric Sen, as always, stood ready, his expression a mask of calm. "Yes, Captain?" "Patch me into intelligence. I want every report, every scrap of data we have on Zorathian activity in the last year. This level of devastation doesn't come from nowhere." Elric nodded and stepped away, speaking quietly into his comms. Alara returned to the central console, where Tactical Officer Lind was still analyzing the data they'd gathered since their arrival. "Lind, what's our current status on the planet's surface?" Lind's fingers danced over his console as he brought up a detailed hologram of Zorathia. The once vibrant world was now marred with red zones, indicating destruction, Narvoth activity, and civilian casualties. "Capital city defenses are holding, but only barely," Lind reported. "The Archangels are making progress against the Narvoth ground forces, but the enemy's numbers are overwhelming. Our Inferno beam strike took out one major cluster, but smaller units are spreading out to the surrounding districts." "And the Zorathian fleet?" Alara asked, already knowing the answer. "Still in shambles," Lind said grimly. "We've detected some surviving ships regrouping near the northern pole, but they're too damaged to rejoin the fight." Alara clenched her fists. The Zorathians were supposed to be pioneers in bioengineering, their ships and defenses practically alive. How could a civilization so advanced have fallen so quickly? "Captain," Elric called, returning to her side. "Intelligence just forwarded a preliminary report. You're going to want to see this." The small briefing room adjacent to the bridge was cold and sterile, its walls lined with holo displays. Alara sat at the head of the table, flanked by Elric and Lind. Across the table, a flickering hologram of Coalition Intelligence Officer Mira Joshi glared at them. "You found yourself in the thick of it, Captain," Mira said, her tone sharp. "This situation goes deeper than we thought." "What do you have for us?" Alara asked, skipping formalities. Mira gestured to the display, which filled with streams of data and images. "Our long-range probes have been monitoring Zorathia for months. The Narvoth's arrival isn't entirely unexpected, but the scale of this attack is unprecedented. We believe the Zorathians discovered something that attracted the Narvoth." "Discovered what?" Elric asked. Mira's expression darkened. "We don't know for certain, but we've intercepted fragments of Zorathian communications, suggesting they unearthed an artifact during a deep space mining operation. Whatever it wasn't ordinary." "An artifact?" Alara repeated. "Are we talking about alien technology?" "Possibly," Mira said. "The Zorathians have been cagey about it, even among themselves, but what we do know is that shortly after their discovery, the Narvoth arrived, and they didn't just attack. They're targeting specific locations, as if they're searching for something." Alara leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. If the Narvoth were hunting an artifact, it could explain their sudden interest in Zorathia. But why had the Zorathians kept it a secret? And more importantly, where was it now? We've also identified a pattern in the Narvoth attacks, Mira continued. They're converging on sites associated with the Zorathian Research Division. If that artifact is still on the planet, it's only a matter of time before the Narvoth find it. Or we do, Alara said. She stood abruptly, her mind made up. Mira, send us everything you have on those research sites. We'll coordinate with the archangels on the ground. Understood, Mira said. But be careful, Captain. If the Narvoth want this artifact, it's not just dangerous, it's a threat on a galactic scale. Back on the bridge, Alara wasted no time. The data from intelligence poured in, highlighting several locations across the planet that matched the Narvoth's attack patterns. Each site was a potential lead and a potential battleground. Irono signed on the slash floor as the doors opened. The room was hazy, objectively beautiful, blazing with many colors and matching the data patterns. Helm, Alara ordered. Plot a course for the nearest research site. Lind, I want detailed scans of the area before we make our move. Yes, ma'am, Lind replied, his focus unshaken despite the tension. As the Celestial Vanguard shifted position, Alara activated the comms to the surface. The holographic display flickered to life, showing Lieutenant Mira Voss inside her Archangel mech. The pilot was streaked with sweat and grime, her surroundings a cacophony of explosions and gunfire. Captain, Mira said, her voice steady despite the chaos. We're holding the capital for now, but the Narvoth are relentless. What's the situation up there? We've got a lead, Alara said. Intelligence believes the Narvoth are after an artifact. It's likely at one of the research sites scattered across the planet. I need your unit to secure the closest site and confirm what's there. Mira nodded. Understood. Send me the coordinates and we'll move out. Be prepared for heavy resistance, Alara warned. If the Narvoth are after this thing, they won't let it go easily. Wouldn't be fun otherwise, Mira said with a faint smirk before cutting the transmission. The research site was nestled in a mountainous region far from the capital, its sleek biotechnological structures blending almost seamlessly with the surrounding landscape. The Celestial Vanguard hung above it in low orbit, scanning the area for hostiles. Captain, we've got movement, Lind reported. Narvoth forces detected ground units and aerial bioships. They're converging on the site. Do we have visual on the artifact? Alara asked. Negative, Lind said. But there's an underground facility beneath the main structure. If it's here, that's where it'll be. Alara nodded. Deploy the Archangels. We'll provide cover from above. Mira's Archangel squad landed on the outskirts of the research site, their mechs kicking up clouds of dust and debris. The landscape was eerily quiet, the distant sounds of Narvoth activity the only indication of life or death. Stay sharp, Mira said, her voice calm but firm. The Narvoth are already here. The squad moved in formation, their weapons primed. The site's entrance was partially collapsed, but the Zorathians' organic architecture had partially repaired itself, leaving just enough space for the mechs to enter. Inside, the facility was a labyrinth of glowing walls and pulsating conduits. The Zorathians' biotech design both beautiful and unsettling. The team moved cautiously, their sensors scanning for any signs of the artifact. Captain, we're inside, Mira reported. No sign of the artifact yet, but this place is a fortress. Whatever they were working on, they didn't want anyone to find it. Understood, Alara replied. Keep me updated. As the squad ventured deeper, the air grew colder, the walls slick with an organic sheen. Finally, they reached a large, circular chamber. At its center stood a pedestal, and on that pedestal was the artifact. It was a shimmering, crystalline object, its surface alive with shifting colors and patterns. It pulsed, faintly, as if it were breathing. The sight of it sent a chill through Mira's spine. I think we found it, she said. Before she could move closer, the chamber trembled. The Narvoth had arrived. From the bridge of the Celestial Vanguard, Alara watched the battle unfold in real time. The Narvoth swarmed the research site, their grotesque forms overwhelming the terrain. Mira's squad fought valiantly, their archangels cutting through the enemy with precision and fury. But the Narvod's numbers were endless. "Captain," Lynn said urgently, "we've detected energy fluctuations from the artifact. It's emitting a signal, something powerful." "What kind of signal?" Alara asked. "Unknown," Lynn admitted, "but whatever it is, it's attracting more Narvoth." Alara's mind raced. They couldn't let the artifact fall into enemy hands, but extracting it under these conditions was nearly impossible. "Unless—" "Prepare a retrieval team," she ordered. "I'm going down there." Elric's head snapped up. "Captain, It's not up for debate," Alara interrupted. "If that artifact is as dangerous as we think, I'm not leaving it to chance." As the Celestial Vanguard deployed its captain to the surface, the battle for the artifact and the fate of Zorathia reached its tipping point. The tension on the Celestial Vanguard's bridge was palpable as the mission entered its most critical phase. Captain Alara Vren had made the rare and dangerous decision to leave her command post and descend to the surface. Her intent was clear: secure the artifact and uncover the truth behind its power. While the Dreadnought's crew worked tirelessly to maintain their aerial dominance, Alara prepared for a confrontation that could alter the galaxy's course. Alara's boots touched the planet's scorched surface, the heat from nearby fires radiating against her combat suit. The shuttle that had ferried her here roared skyward, leaving her and her hand-picked escort in the shadows of the towering organic structures of the Zorathian research site. Her helmet's visor displayed real-time tactical data, a steady stream of alerts and updates feeding her mission-critical information. "Captain, this area is crawling with Narvoth," said Lieutenant Kane Loran, her ground operations officer, through the comlink. His weapon, a plasma rifle optimized for short-range combat, glinted under the flickering light of the burning horizon. "We're seeing enemy units massing near the North Ridge." "We'll deal with them if they engage," Alara replied, her tone unwavering. "Right now the artifact is our priority. Let's move." Their small team advanced cautiously through the labyrinth of biotechnological corridors. The structures pulsated faintly, as if alive, and the eerie hum of energy resonated through the walls. The Narvath had done their damage here. Scorched marks and shattered conduits told of recent battles. Despite this, the Zorathian architecture held strong, its organic material regenerating slowly. "Captain," Kane said, gesturing to a side panel, "this system looks intact. It might give us access to the facility's data." Alara nodded. "Do it quickly, we don't have much time." Kane's nimble fingers danced over the panel, and the holographic interface flared to life. Streams of alien text and symbols scrolled past before resolving into a coherent map of the facility. One section blinked with a soft golden glow. "There," Kane said, pointing. "Central lab. That's where the artifact is being stored." "Good work," Alara said. "Relay the coordinates to the archangels and get us moving." The squad pressed onward, the oppressive atmosphere of the facility growing heavier with every step. Alara's thoughts churned as they approached their destination. The artifact's power was undeniable. Its signal had drawn the Narvoth, but it had also radiated something else, an almost sentient sense of purpose. What was its true nature, and why did it feel like it was waiting for something? Or someone? The central lab was unlike any other part of the facility. A massive, circular chamber. Its walls were lined with what looked like translucent, living tissue, glowing faintly with an internal light. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, and on it rested the artifact. The object was mesmerizing, a crystalline formation. It refracted light into an array of colors that seemed to shift and dance, as if alive. Its surface was smooth but almost liquid in appearance, and it emitted a faint hum that resonated deep in Alara's chest. She approached cautiously, her weapon raised. "This is it," she said, her voice low. "This is what they were protecting." As she reached the pedestal, her visor flared with a warning. Energy spike detected. Her suit's AI intoned, and the hum of the artifact intensified. "Captain," Kane said urgently, "we've got Narvath incoming, multiple hostiles closing fast." Alara spun, her eyes narrowing. "How many?" Kane grimaced. "All of them." The ground shook as the first wave of Narvath biosoldiers burst into the room. They were nightmarish creatures, their insectoid bodies bristling with organic weapons and bioluminescent sacs. The squad opened fire immediately, plasma rounds tearing into the advancing horde. The air filled with the stench of burning flesh and the high-pitched screeches of dying Narvath. "Hold the line!" Alara shouted, firing precise bursts from her rifle. The artifact's glow intensified, bathing the room in shifting hues, as if responding to the chaos. Above the planet, the Celestial Vanguard faced its own battle. Swarms of Narvath bioships hammered the Dreadnought's defenses, their sheer numbers threatening to overwhelm the ship's formidable firepower. "Tactical, status on our shields," Commander Elric Sen barked, his usually calm demeanor cracking under the strain. "Shields at 42%, Lin reported, sweat beading on his brow. "We're taking heavy fire, but the automated turrets are holding the smaller ships at bay." Elric gritted his teeth. "Reposition us above the central lab. If the captain calls for extraction, we need to be ready." "Yes, sir," the helm officer replied. The ship groaned as it executed the maneuver, its railguns firing relentlessly. Despite the Narvath's aggression, the Dreadnought refused to falter. Its crew, driven by loyalty to their captain and their mission, fought with everything they had. Back in the lab, the battle reached a fever pitch. The Narvath were relentless, their bodies piling up, but their numbers undiminished. Alara's squad was running low on ammo, their backs against the glowing walls. "Captain, we can't hold this position much longer," Kane shouted, slamming a fresh clip into his rifle. Alara's mind raced. The artifact pulsed with an almost hypnotic rhythm, its energy surging with every passing second. She knew they couldn't leave it behind. It was too dangerous to fall into enemy hands. But the Narvath were closing in, and escape seemed impossible. Then the artifact flared, blinding the room with a burst of light. Alara shielded her eyes, her visor struggling to compensate. When the light faded, the Narvath froze. The creatures stood motionless, their bodies twitching as if caught in some invisible grip. A low guttural sound reverberated through the chamber, and the artifact pulsed again. The Narvath screeched in unison before retreating, their massive forms scrambling back through the corridors they had just stormed. "What the hell just happened?" Kane asked, his voice filled with awe and terror. Alara approached the artifact cautiously, her heart pounding. "I don't know," she said, "but whatever this thing is, it's more than just a piece of technology." Her comlink crackled to life. "Captain, this is Mira. We're clearing out the last Narvath units outside. What's your status?" "We've secured the artifact," Alara replied, "but it just repelled the Narvath. I think it's controlling them." "Controlling them?" Mira asked, disbelief in her voice. "It's the only explanation," Alara said. "We need to get it off this planet before the Narvath regroup." "Understood. I'll prep for extraction." The journey back to the surface was tense but uneventful. The Narvath had scattered, their coordinated assault disrupted by the artifact's energy. Alara's team emerged into the open air just as Mira's archangels secured the landing zone. A shuttle descended, its engines kicking up a storm of dust and debris. Alara and her squad boarded quickly, the artifact carefully sealed in a containment unit. The shuttle rocketed toward the waiting Celestial Vanguard, its occupants grim and silent. On board the Dreadnought, the artifact was placed in a secure containment chamber under constant surveillance. Alara stood outside the chamber, her arms crossed as she stared through the reinforced glass at the pulsating crystal. Elric approached, his expression heavy with concern. "Captain," he said softly, "you made the right call down there. But whatever this thing is, it's going to attract more attention. The Naboth won't stop until they get it back." "I know," Alara said, her voice weary. "And now it's our responsibility. Whatever this artifact is, it's tied to the Narvoth, and possibly to something much bigger." Elric placed a hand on her shoulder. "We'll face it together. Whatever comes next, the Celestial Vanguard is ready." Alara nodded, though the weight of the artifact's secrets pressed heavily on her mind. The discovery had saved Zorathia, for now, but it had also opened a door to questions she wasn't sure humanity was ready to answer. And as the Celestial Vanguard sailed away from the burning planet, its engines carrying it into the depths of space, the artifact pulsed again. This time its glow spread beyond the containment chamber, a silent signal that rippled through the void, touching far-off worlds and awakening something ancient.